into the online broadcast network, AFTERBUZZ TV. Over 20 million weekly downloads in over 150 countries, and your number one source for after-show entertainment. AFTERBUZZ TV, the destination for TV superfans. Producing aftershows for over 300 of your favorite TV shows, interviewing celebrities and showrunners, and bringing you behind-the-scenes exclusives. All thanks to E! Entertainment's Maria Menounos, producer Kevin Undergaro, and internet leader Akamai. Now, let the buzz begin!
Yeah. All right. Woo!
This is a great song.
Hello, Cleveland.
Hello.
You know, I'm actually from Cleveland. I'm very impressed.
Are you really?
Oh,
Yeah.
there
That
you
was
go.
a Spinal Tap reference. It was
Of
not
course
about
it was.
you.
But
Nice.
I'm sure a number of people from Cleveland will be watching this.
Good.
So I'm very impressed by your foresight. It's really good.
Well,
Awesome.
hello, Cleveland.
Hello, everybody. We are definitely getting into this. Hello, everyone. Welcome to AFTERBUZZ TV. We are here doing a special interview for the concert experience. We have a special guest in the studio. I'm your host, Marisa Serafini. Joining me, I have...
Hey guys, it's Jeff Graham. You can find me on Twitter at Jeffrey C. Graham and on Instagram at Jeffrey Crane Graham.
Awesome. You can follow me on Twitter at Serafini TV. Our special guest, Deke Sharon, is considered the father of contemporary acapella, music director, and vocal arranger for the hit NBC show Sing Off, and as well as the blockbuster films Pitch Perfect 1 and 2 and 3.
Three's on its way.
And
Yes!
3. Yes, Deke Sharon, thank you so much for joining.
My pleasure to be here. Thanks for having me.
This is awesome.
On short notice.
I know.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Thank
when
you so
Deke
much for
says he
taking
can
the
come, you make adjustments and you get Deke in the studio. This was
Absolutely.
honestly since like 2008. I've wanted to meet you and get to know you better. So this is really, really special for me.
Thank you. I
Definitely.
appreciate it. And
course.
you,
Yeah.
just before the show, you reminded me that we have met before.
We have met before.
Sing
yeah.
off auditions.
Yeah, so I'm sure some of my Aka boys will be watching this. This is the Deke Sharon we met in Nashville in 2011. So
And Jeff was in a group called the Cheesies,
Yes.
and they were
Cheesies.
this close to making the show. I was
Yeah.
super pulling for them. They were all these like mismatched jackets, and they were like really funny
Yeah.
and geeky, but in a compelling way. You would have been perfect on the sing-off. So
Well, next time.
here you
Next
are.
time.
You've made it in show
I
business
made it in
nonetheless.
show business nonetheless.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, definitely in the show business, you're here to talk about your new Lifetime show, Pitch Slack,
Yep.
which you are a vocal director and coach there. I mean, this is your first real show on television. What's that like between everything you've already done so far?
Well, the best way I can describe it to people is so child star, like the worst thing you can have in your life is to be a child star, because they like have all the success when they're young and they don't know what it means or whatever. And then there are people who get famous in their teenage years or in their 20s, and they're like, yeah, no, I'm cool because I'm supposed to be cool.
Yeah.
And then into your 30s or something, people might be like, whew, I finally made it or whatever. But when Lifetime calls you and you're 47 years old, the whole thing is just like hilarious.
Yeah.
You know, you're like, what? Why?
Especially
what
when
am I
it's
doing?
Lifetime that calls you when you're 47 years old.
I'm an honored to be on the show.
Oh, yeah.
It's a pleasure to be in front of the camera as opposed to behind the camera. But still, just the entire thing, there's a level of surreality to it, and at the same time, I'm just able to find humor in everything because I'm not worried about it and I don't take it too seriously.
Oh, good. Awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah, and on the show, you're dealing with teenagers and high schoolers.
Yes.
Is it challenging to work with? They're technically minors compared to actors or the older adults who might be in college or at that point. Is there a challenge there?
Musically, there is, because they're not as experienced, and it's really amateur singers. And Stay Tuned was an after-school club. I mean, they met about a third as often as Highlands Voices, and they only had a few songs in the repertoire before I got an opportunity to work with them. But, however, on the plus side, they just love singing. And people often forget the root of the word amateur is amour, to love. So there's something beautiful and compelling about amateur singing, amateur performing, particularly in acapella. People really, when you do it right, they pour their hearts into the music. So that really is the best thing about high school acapella in general.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's been really cool for me. I did collegiate acapella, but the high school acapella scene didn't really evolve until I was out of high school. So
Yeah, that's true.
It's so cool for me to see that high schoolers have the opportunity to really compete at a high level. And I mean, the way you've really grown Stay Tuned, even just in 3 episodes, they're close to a lot of collegiate groups out there, which is really fun to see.
Wow, you're nice to say that.
Yeah, no, I'm serious.
They dug deep and found a lot of performing and artistry. And overall, I think the way they were structured was much more like a choir because there are 21 of them, and also because they had so little time to actually rehearse together. And Heather, the director and the founder of the group, is fantastic. She's lovely, and she had done a lot with the group.
Cool.
But having the time after school each day with them to make the show just gave me an opportunity to take it to the next level.
Great.
Yeah, and for the rehearsal process, I mean, you have such a big group. How long is the rehearsals usually? And I mean, the shows like 3 days, but how long are normal rehearsal days?
Well, the first half of the show was happening during the school year, which is why like half the kids cut away and went to prom because they actually did that.
Yeah.
So basically what we had was they'd get picked up after school around 3:30. They'd come over. Hopefully by 4:30 or 5, we were able to start working, and then we had to let them go by 8 or so. But then there's also, we need to do interviews, and wait, stop, we have to do this again. So it wasn't like I could just sit down and start working with them, like now let's drill the fundamentals, whatever. It was definitely combat acapella.
Yeah.
It was, you don't go to war with the acapella you want, you go to war with the time and the resources that you get.
I'm sure. Yeah.
But I'm still very proud of what we created on the show, and there's an honesty to it and a vitality that I think definitely transcends.
It's really cool. You can tell that those kids really have a passion for singing, and that's enough to really push their performances to great places, I'd say.
There's no question.
Yeah.
And the fun thing for me in this short amount of time is to try to get to know every single person in the group.
Yeah.
And I don't want to give away too much in the show, but it's my job, first of all, they bring me there because they want to win, but I have a different motive. I'm not there because I want to help any particular acapella group win. I don't care who wins. That's not the point of acapella. It's not winning. The competitions that I have created exist for the purpose of motivating.
Awesome.
And so I want to help these guys understand why they're up on that stage, what the deeper value of acapella is, and more importantly, give every single member of that group an opportunity to shine.
Preach. I love it.
Yeah, that's why I'm there. I mean, I'm using this as a vehicle to hopefully motivate and inspire a whole new generation of young acapella singers.
Cool. Awesome.
Yeah, and I mean, it's such a big group for Stay Tuned. Did you have a lot of time for one-on-one to like really, get intimate and like teach them?
No, as a matter of fact, I think it was the second episode. Maybe I'm sweating a couple times on camera. I don't really pay too much attention to the actual final cuts because I lived it, so I know what it was.
Right.
But there was what I did for that second week, I think it was I broke groups up into different rooms and I ran between the different rooms, so I was like out of breath a lot because it'd be like, okay, soloist over here, okay, let's have our rhythm section over here, okay, background parts is over here, okay, now I'm gonna let's go, okay, now I'm gonna run back to check in with soloist, how the soloist doing, it was like a 4-ring circus, 5-ring circus, and then I realized like, it's not gonna work, I can't do this, so I had to come up with another way to get it learned in such a short period of time.
So sectionals weren't really a way to go with this group, because that's what I've wondered a lot of times.
Yeah.
Groups that size will just break up into sections and have students lead potentially.
I didn't have any help, and as people will see in this 4th episode, I'm sick at the beginning. I was genuinely in the hospital, and they had to run their own rehearsal, and I think people will see that maybe that isn't the best method for Stay Tuned to learn music.
Interesting.
Yeah.
On their own?
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah.
No, I love them, but see, here's the thing. Right. So you've got a group of 21 kids, and they're like a United Colors of Benetton ad. Like, you have more diversity in this particular group than you're going to find in most a cappella groups.
Yeah.
Just all kinds of their age diversity, their background, their socioeconomic status, their race, their upbringing, their style, their taste in music. I mean, this guy's pre-med, and this one's a computer nerd, and like the whole thing.
It's like Glee. We were talking about it really is like
so like
New
Glee.
Directions, the show.
Totally, except in Glee, they're all 28 years old. But that's beside the point. But the thing is, so it's hard for such a diverse group of kids to just automatically snap together and all get on the same page is the right way to do things. And so it really helped to have somebody from the outside be able to help steer them in a particular direction.
Cool.
Yeah, absolutely. Direction is key, especially if you're one and end goal at the end of the day. I mean, so you worked with so many, and for what is the rehearsal? Well, not really the rehearsal, but for the filming process for the competitions.
Yeah.
What's that like? The mechanics behind it? Do you have to film? Is it all live?
Well,
Or live mics
yeah, the
involved?
thing is, so there were occasional times when the cameras were still getting ready, and I'm like, guys, come gather around the piano. Here, let me teach you more of your parts. But pretty quickly, I realized like I needed to rush every step of the process. Like, okay, you mostly have your notes. Let's move on to movement. Okay, you mostly have your movement. Let's sit down and talk about what the motive and the emotion is behind the song. Okay, you've got that. Let's drill down the solo lines. I had to move faster than I wanted to, but luckily I had the single greatest training ground for moving too quickly in acapella, which was the sing-off.
Right.
Yeah.
That was trial by fire. Every week, all different ages of groups, all different backgrounds. So that prepared me for the chaos that was going to be making this all happen in just 3 days.
Yeah, I bet. I'm excited. When we get there, I'll have some questions about the sing-off and just how that was formatted and how we arranged. We'll keep talking pitch live a little more, but
Yeah. So for the competition, was it all live to tape, or when all the groups are actually performing, do you perform it just once, or do you do it several times? Can you tell us?
What can I say? What can I say? I believe I can say that each group did it 3 times.
Okay.
Only one time was judged, so the judging is standardized. But the nature of the cameras and the angles and the shoots, all that kind of stuff. When we were working the sing-off, we had 17 cameras.
Right.
So you could do one take and
Take the best moments.
But for this, okay, do your performance, great, we've got all the wide angles, and then like by the 3rd take, you had guys with steady cams up there running around the group and stuff, so you can get all those close angle shots.
Okay.
Hopefully I haven't broken my non-disclosure agreement with that information.
the thing is,
Production.
it sounds like the essence of the competition was preserved because the judges only heard it once. So
Yeah, well, they judged one of them.
they judged one.
I think it's not like they left the room for the other ones, but the bottom line is, and ultimately, I mean, the sing-off, there's a big cash prize at the end. There's, there's a record contract, and there are all kinds of laws and legalities that have to go into it.
Right.
This competition is a little friendlier. It's about high school groups and all this kind of stuff. So it's not about the competition.
Right.
Yeah.
I mean, it certainly wasn't for me. And so rather than getting really worked up that a group like Vocal Forte's scores were so low, the only reason I was really worked up, it was like, who cares? But it felt disrespectful to me.
Right.
Like, can't these judges tell that this group just did something amazing?
Right.
And the fact of the matter is, you go right now on iTunes and you look at all the downloaded songs and whatever, the number 1 most downloaded songs is Warrior.
Yeah.
It's Vocal Forte.
That solo is.
They were freaking awesome.
Oh my god!
And actually, what happened is, as soon as that performance was done, the camera stopped rolling. All of Highland's voices and Stay Tuned all like jumped up and surrounded me, and they were like, "Deke, what happened? How could they have scored him so low?" I was like, "I don't know. This makes no sense to me."
I know.
I mean, that's stuff that happens off camera.
Right.
But bottom line, hopefully, all of the groups who are a part of the show realize the best thing is that they got an opportunity to be on television, have 500,000 people watch their performance and get excited about it. I mean, that's huge.
In honor of Acapella, which is the best.
That's what it's for.
Yeah.
Well, when it comes to the scoring, and hopefully you won't get in trouble for this, but we've been discussing every week on our after show that we feel like some groups may not have gotten the best scores that they could have gotten. Do you agree with that? Or, I mean, Highland Voices gets scored every week. And Vocal Forte should have been scored higher, in our opinions.
I can't disagree. I mean, am I going to get in trouble if I say something like, no disrespect to the various people I got as judges, but none of them have the experience or the ears that I've got.
Right.
I mean, this is what I do. This is my life. And I don't know if they thought they were hearing something different than they were hearing, or if I was sitting in a different place.
Right.
But it made no sense whatsoever. But as I told Stay Tuned every week, of course, it doesn't make it to television. Guys, don't worry about the numbers. Don't worry about 3 judges' perspectives. What you need to do is you need to go up on that stage, you need to connect with the audience, and ultimately you'll know how well you did. It's up to you to speak your own truth to the audience and connect with them. Say something honest. Sing from the heart. And then the numbers that come in are the numbers that come in. I mean, what can you do? And the thing is, acapella is music. I think in the first episode they did put in that, it's subjective.
Right.
It is.
Like, who's better, Beethoven or Bach? Answer, it doesn't exist. There's no better. It's not the Olympics. This isn't sport.
Yeah.
People are going on stage and they're singing. You like Mariah Carey better, you like Beyonce better, who's right? It doesn't matter. What matters is what you like.
Yeah.
So that's the exciting thing about the show, is that every person who's watching can pick the groups that they like, can have the different experience, and ultimately enjoy all the different groups, because there's something to be enjoyed about every single performance on the show.
We felt that way. It's been fun. Each competition, each group really has brought something pretty amazing, which is really special. And the fun thing about acapella is that every group has such a specific flavor. And that's what's been really fun to see, is that on stage, no matter who wins or loses, each group brings their own kind of spice, which I thought is really fun.
Yeah.
Right, and again, win, lose, this is all the construct that brings people to watch the show.
Right.
I mean, I've had the same feeling for over a decade. When I first started what's now the ICCAs, I would go backstage and I would tell all the competitors, guys, make friends. You're going to be in groups with these people. Some of you are going to get married. The people on the stage are not your competitors. Just go up there and sing for the audience. And then with the sing-off, I literally told them, as soon as everybody else was out of the room, I said, here's the deal. The people in this room are your best friends. You don't want these other groups to fall on their face. Someone's going to change the channel, watch Mythbusters. You want them to be awesome.
Yeah.
You want them to be amazing. Like, don't drink that whole reality show Kool-Aid where I'm only here to win and I don't care, like, whatever. These other people lose that. And the beautiful thing was, as a result of that, we had a very different reality show than has ever been in a music show. Time magazine said it's the best reality show on television. NPR, like all these people who never comment on these kind of things, they understood. You had Ben Folds speaking intelligently about the mechanics of music and harmony. You had it was an intelligent judging panel, and it was a respectful show.
Yeah.
And I have great pride in the sing off, and that's how I've been approaching these singers in Pitch Slapped as well. It's about the music.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And do you think there will be albums released, or is there albums to be released after Pitch Slapped ends?
Well, each of the group's performances is getting uploaded to iTunes, which is great. But an album means you end up having to go in the studio and record all this kind of stuff. And the fact of the matter is, I don't think it can happen. Highlands Voices, all but one graduated, like they're all off in college now. And Stay Tuned, maybe a third of them graduated and whatnot. And so realistically, probably not. But the good news is the legacy of these groups remain. Highlands Voices and Stay Tuned both just performed on the ICHSA, the high school competition stages, and audiences love them, and they're going to still be out there. So go online and see the different performances and follow them.
Awesome.
Yeah, they're awesome, and even the competing teams that they go up against, because they're real teams.
Yeah.
In that area, does anyone have a say in like who they get to compete against? Or,
I was,
or like how do they bring the computers?
Here, that's who it's going to be. I think they were just reaching out to groups, and then halfway through the show, once the name changed, so I forget what it's called. The summer invitational goes into the elimination rounds.
I always assumed it was IHCSA. I didn't realize that it was its own kind of competition.
It's its own baby. But what happens is there are all these different groups from Greater New Jersey that end up coming and being a part of it. So you see Vocal Forte, who are fantastic, and they're good friends with Stay Tuned because they're in the same region, so they would be competitions and performances all together. There's a group called Solfege, which are all student run. In fact, they had to petition their school, like the adults, to exist.
Wow.
And they got all the support from the community and stuff, and they're going, and you'll see young new groups that just recently got formed on the show, and established groups, and basically it's a primer on what's going on in the overall high school New Jersey acapella scene, which is great.
Yeah. Cool.
Wow, that's amazing. So we really love this show.
Oh yeah,
really
it's been fun.
Good.
It's been fun because you always wonder, like, with a Lifetime reality show, how is it going to be handled? And we feel like for the most part, it really does a good job, most of the time, championing acapella, and really we feel like preserving the innocence of who these high schoolers are, which is fun. So
good. I do. Yeah. I wish there were more of a percentage of the time spent in the rehearsal, seeing what's going on behind the scenes, getting to the process and whatever, and less about the stakes. Like, only one day to competition. We've got to win this one. This one really matters.
Like, 2 days left.
Yeah, and if you don't see it on screen occasionally, maybe you can hear my eyes rolling in the back of my head, because that's not what acapella is about. But I mean, if that's what needs to be on screen to get viewers to watch the show, then that's what it is.
Right.
Okay. Absolutely. I understand. And going a little bit back to the rehearsal time that you spend with the kids, you talked about before we went live on air that you have some rules that you like to teach to them.
That's right. And there's so much that we did in the rehearsals that didn't make it, but I have 3 rules that I laid down for Stay Tuned. I mean, every group that I work with needs something different, but I felt like these guys needed some really clear guidelines. So the first rule I taught them on the first day was respect yourself. And that was about taking care of yourself, making sure you get enough sleep, liquid, and basically just realizing you are the instrument. I think people don't realize when you're looking at acapella, like it's you. Right. It's 100% you, so you need to be in good shape. Rule number 2 they were not expecting, and that was respect others. And that came as a result of me hearing how much they were talking trash about the other acapella groups, in particular Highlands Voices, and I would have none of it. Yeah. None of it. And maybe my greatest accomplishment throughout the entire show was changing that dynamic between the two groups such that by about the halfway mark starting here and a little bit later on, they become really good friends. Cool. And they set up this like secret chat between all of them. And so now they're all still like constantly chatting back and forth and whatever. It warms my heart because ultimately there's no value in these groups being head to head. Right. What I told Stay Tuned was, guys, look at Highlands Voices. They're a bunch of high school singers just like you. They have the same problems, the same background, the same worries, the same hopes, and more importantly, they're more established than you. Like, watch them and learn from them, ask them questions. And what happened is they stopped throwing attitude, and then Highlands Voices was like, oh, what happened? They stopped, and then all of a sudden, before competitions and afterwards, they like hang out in the dressing rooms and jam together. I love it. It was really awesome. So and then that made possible the ability to take 3 people from each group and go on the Today Show. Yeah. I mean, if they hated each other and they wouldn't like work with each other, you couldn't. I started at 7 p.m. the night before, learning the song, and then got up at 5 a.m., went in for sound check, threw some choreo together after that, and then bam, we're on the air. So it was like the fastest turnaround I've ever had in my life, and that would have been impossible if they had no respect for each other, if they were at each other's throats.
Speaking of turnaround, I've been curious, are you doing all the arrangements for Stay Tuned?
For Stay Tuned, yes, with the exception of Hide and Seek, which they already had in their repertoire.
Okay, cool.
That first week they need to, but then every single additional arrangement I'm doing from scratch for them, because I'm trying to build out and their sound and their style, and something that will come out later on in the episodes, hopefully, unless they left it on the cutting room floor, we'll see. Is that each week the number of parts in the arrangement grows.
Yeah, I've noticed that.
First week it was a 5-part arrangement, then we go up to 7, and then I think it's like 9, and then 11, and maybe by the ending, every single person in that group will have their own part in the arrangement.
Wow. How do you arrange a 21-part acapella song in a weekend? Like, that is, I mean, I know you've arranged...
There wasn't even a weekend, it was like, turn it around tonight.
I know you've arranged like 40,000 trillion acapella songs, but that's crazy.
Yeah, like, definitely over 2,000. I stopped counting at that point. Yeah. But I've always been fast. I've been quick in arranging, and I go right into the computer finale or whatever. Yeah. But in the case of Stay Tuned, the bigger question is like, what can they do? Let me understand each one of their voices. When I was music director of the Tufts Beelzebubs, that's what I started to do. I started to arrange for the guys in the group as opposed to... Yeah, so think of each person as their own instrument. What do they do well? You're really good at rhythm, but your tuning's a little wonky. Okay, I'm going to give you a cool rhythmic part. You're beautiful soaring high in your range, but you get a little raspy when you're down low. Well, I'll keep you up high and floating on a ballad, but then if I want the rasp because we're doing something Motownish, I'll move you down there. It was literally like put each person in their own spot.
I would love to ask about the Bubs. Is there anything with Pitch Slap we feel like we haven't covered yet? Or?
Oh, no, we can definitely move on. We love Pitch Slap.
Yeah, I'm glad. Well, you guys can contact me anytime, Skype, call, email, and just ask whatever questions.
I was saying...
What were you thinking here? What's the deal?
Before we went to tape, I was like, Deke Sharon is the Aka God, and he is too nice. Like, you are so unnecessarily nice.
Shut up.
There it is.
There
I guess he's not.
That wasn't even believable. Yeah.
I know. But it's just it's so great that, like, kind of our, like, fearless leader is so great and like open and means a lot. Like, it's really special.
No, I appreciate that. Well, I mean, I like to say that nobody who's really in the acapella world can be a jerk. Like, it doesn't work. Like, you won't last long.
Yeah, you won't.
Everybody has to play nicely with each other. Yeah. So that's a beautiful thing about the community, and people learn that. Yeah.
So about the Bubs, I'm a huge fan. I've loved the Bubs for a long time.
For those who do not know.
Yep. Right, from Tufts.
Can you not?
I think we could consider them kind of the first like modern college a cappella group, kind of owing to you. I would love to know what the group sounded like before you came, because they've been in existence since the 60s, right?
Well, yeah, as a matter of fact, early 60s, because when I first got there, they celebrated 25 years, and then a couple years ago, just the 50th. So
amazing.
Yeah.
So what do you feel like was their sound before you came? And how do you feel like you helped shape the group to who and how they are today?
Are you guys ready to be bored? Because I could talk for hours about
I won't
this.
be bored.
Yeah. Okay, well, I'll try to be quick. So it was started by by a man named Tim Bale and a few of his friends. And the idea was his dad was in the Whiffenpoofs, and he wanted to create something like that at Tufts.
In case you guys don't know.
Yes, the granddaddy of all acapella groups. So they started out singing those classic Whiffenpoof songs, a little bit of barbershop, eventually a little bit of doo-wop, and that kind of male choral sound. And then over time, as different great arrangers came into the group, and Al Drinan, Gene Blake, Marty Fernandi, these are names that don't necessarily mean anything to you, but these guys started to push the sound forward. So even by 1985, the group was dabbling with songs that were currently on the radio.
Okay.
In fact, there's a video out there somewhere of the 1985 Bubs doing Thriller with full Thriller choreo.
Oh, nice. That's very acapella.
Which, but at the time was not something that was all that popular.
Interesting. Okay.
But then when I was in the group, I wanted to sing the songs that people wouldn't touch a cappella. Not do a rap tune just to be a novelty, but like to really dig down and do Peter Gabriel and do Pink Floyd and the kind of stuff that you just can't shooby-doo-wop your way through, the songs that are not typically vocal. So that's what drove me to starting to experiment with vocal instrumental sounds, and the legacy that's most quoted is vocal percussion, the use and integration, which is different from beatboxing, since we're like talking high-level a cappella.
Oh yeah, I love it.
Yeah, beatboxing is fantastic and obviously grew from the rap tradition, but the grooves and the sounds and the stylings of that are distinct from what's happened within acapella and vocal percussion. Vocal percussion and acapella requires a very consistent sound, much more of a replication of a traditional rock drum kit rather than sampled sounds and loops and beatbox, although there's a lot of overlap in the Venn diagram.
Right.
And it's grown and blossomed and built out, and the thing that's really most exciting to me is when I graduated college, there were a little over 200 college a cappella groups. Now there are over 3,000.
Yeah.
So the community has just gone, and then now the high school a cappella is exploding beneath it because they're looking up at their big brothers and sisters and saying, we want to do that.
Oh, yeah.
So I have a feeling there are going to be 10,000 or more high school a cappella groups before long.
Yeah.
That's amazing. Why do you think it's grown so much in the last 20 plus years? Do you think it's because technology itself has advanced and there's a lot of like electronic sounds that people can produce on their laptop or whatever, and then people who are singing are also imitating that sound, so it kind of correlates?
I mean, we're like they said in those old Palm Olive ads, you're soaking in it. Like, we're too close to it now to know for sure, but I can just fire a bunch of different potential reasons at you. One is 100 years ago, barbershop. 50 years ago, doo-wop. We may just be doo.
Yeah.
Number one. Number two, the increased amount of technology in music may be pushing people towards a more natural sound, both on stage and in the recorded studio. Although people still use tuning with voices and whatnot, the bottom line is there's a humanity to a cappella that is unmatched when you've got a bunch of synthesizers and whatnot.
Yeah.
So that's another potential result of the whole thing. And you can go on and on and on for all these different reasons. I think the internet had a lot to do with allowing people who had a deep interest in something but were spread out to come together. I mean, if I was born a generation earlier, I might not have had the same access to the population. When I graduated college, I had a newsletter that I printed and stapled in my room and sent out to people. And then it was one of the first early adapters with the website. There are lots of nonprofits called CASA, but I got CASA.org because I was first to it. I lived in San Francisco near Silicon Valley, and I was like, I want, and so we had email and Usenet news groups and whatnot to draw together this community. And the availability of different competitions, the growth of some really great professional groups. Obviously, movies like Pitch Perfect and The Sing-Off have helped popularize it. I mean, there's so many different aspects. It's no one thing.
I think for
all
me,
of them together, it's a perfect storm.
I didn't interrupt it.
I was just
going to say, I think for me, it was just like the novelty of going to college and being like, oh my gosh, I can sing like I used to do in choir, but I'm singing like songs that sorority girls would love if I was singing them.
Well, and the fact of the matter is, when I got to Tufts, the Beelzebubs were the most popular group on campus. Like, more than the football players, more than any fraternity. Like, the girls like pointing at it, which is all you want as a guy in college, is to be a part of that. And it was really cool because you were rock stars on campus. Like, lines all the way down the block and through the quad to get into your concerts. And just that feeling of what you're doing is really important drove my entire group in the Beelzebubs, and certainly the years before and after, to feel like I really want to make this excellent because it matters.
Yeah.
And in a lot of ways, the college a cappella world has driven the current sound, style, and methodology behind this big a cappella boom now.
Yeah, it's interesting because I know when you were leaving, you were like, okay, this is my favorite thing. I'm a cappella. How do I do this? and like you kind of fearlessly were like, I'm gonna make this a job. Like, first of all, what drove you to be that inspired to do it? Because you're kind of entering like this, barren desert of.
Oh yeah.
So how did you, like, what was your first year out of college? Like, how did you approach that? How did you think I'm gonna make acapella?
My career.
Well, first of all, I just loved it. So I was like, this is what I need to do.
Cool.
And I don't know why I believed him. I look back and I'm like, dude, I was nuts. What was I thinking? But it worked out. So
it worked out okay.
The analogy I like to use is, those like little water skeeters that are able to walk on water by never putting too much weight on any one limb? Yeah. It was kind of like that. I started the House Jacks, so I had some performing income coming in. I started a couple festivals, the first acapella conferences. I would work with choirs. I was doing a lot of custom arranging back then. For like 10 years, I was it. I mean, anybody who wanted this style of music was just coming to me to arrange. Right. So that's when I did a lot of arranging in a short period of time. I started a publishing company, et cetera, et cetera. And, different times of the year, like, August is rolling around, back to school. I'm going to be arranging my butt off for the next 2 months. And then, it's spring, it's road trip season, and all these groups and festivals, and et cetera, et cetera. So it was diversity. It was being kind of a jack of all trades within this acapella community until it grew to the point, where it is now.
I love that advice because it applies to anyone who wants to do what they want to do as a job. Just spread yourself within the same community, do everything you can, and eventually you'll make it work.
Yeah, it's the right combination of breadth and depth that worked out for me. I mean, obviously everything's different. Now people can go in and have a full-time career in acapella, simply editing the tracks from college acapella recordings. I mean, that's a full-time job now.
Oh yeah,
which is amazing. It's amazing.
Oh, for sure. Yeah.
So after leaving the Beelzebubs and leaving college and whatnot, you already had a fairly established career. So many things came your way, including NBC Sing Off. I believe when go doing all your research and whatnot that the show was already produced and had plans moving forward in production, and then they came to you pretty late in the game.
That's right. I guess I haven't really told this story on camera before, but I think it's time I could do it. Okay. So basically, I was maybe the last person hired on, and the executive producer at the time and his assistant realized maybe we need a little more help in the recording side of things. So I was invited to come on board, and it became pretty clear to me in the beginning of this whole thing that although they really knew how to make top level music programs, they didn't understand acapella. So for instance, I asked, so when's the sound check for the groups? And I got kind of a curt, there's no sound checks on the schedule. Did you see the schedule? Now sit down and know your place. So I was like, uh-oh. So basically it was a little bit like Wallace and Gromit. You've seen those cartoons? Yeah. I was the dog who just ran around and fixed things as much as I could. And I was like, they can fire me if they want, but this is acapella's one chance to be on television. And then what happened in the first show, guess what? The audience started cheering for one of the groups, and they couldn't hear themselves, and they went out of tune, and everybody thought they were going to take first place that round. And so next day back, some showrunner was like, what the hell happened to the show? Can anybody tell me what happened?
And you're like, yep.
Yes, and they're like, all right, so what do we need to do? Can someone tell? All right, I can tell you what I need. So can I get a sound check with these groups? How long you need? 45 minutes per group? No. You can have 25 minutes. Okay, thank you. And then it went from there.
Nice.
And then by the end of that first season, I was, they made me a producer, and I brought Ed Boyer on board. I was like, this is too much for one person to do, because I wasn't sleeping. I was sleeping 4 hours a night. It was nutty. And then, so then he became a big part of the overall sound and behind the scenes, and it went from there.
Nice.
That's amazing.
Oh, and also Ben Bram. Ben was still in college. He was arranging for the Backbeats. No, it wasn't even the Backbeats. It was the SoCals on the first season of the show.
It was the SoCals.
Yeah. And that's when I met him. And then for the second season, I was like, can I grow my staff anymore? They're like, well, you can have Ed, and then you need to find somebody locally. Nice. I was like, but acapella, he was like, you need someone locally, and we can't pay him a lot, so you better find someone good. It's like, what am I going to do? That Ben guy seemed like he knew what he was doing. Let me call him and see if he can do it. Boy, did I get lucky there, fast forward to Ben getting a Grammy with Pentatonics,
Gosh,
so wow, so basically I've been blessed to work with incredibly talented people, and
as is true with them. I mean, they would say the same thing for you.
That's nice to say.
That's the community. I mean, it's
it's good people making good music together.
So I have to wonder if that NBC sing-off tie, was that kind of your in for Pitch Perfect? Because I know that's an NBC Universal project.
You know, that was actually a separate thing. Okay. And there's a little interesting backstory there. But Pitch Perfect came as a result of the book Pitch Perfect, which Mickey Rapkin wrote.
Which, fun fact, that was actually, to be initiated into my group in college, we had to read that book. So,
oh, really?
Yeah, we were like maybe the 10,000 that read the book before the movie.
Right.
Yeah, I'm in that nerdy crew.
Mickey wanted to write a book about this interesting world, and he followed 3 different groups, one of whom was Oregon DeVisi, who were tremendous and changed the sound of women's a cappella, but they made it all the way to Carnegie Hall, and then one judge, who was actually a female judge from Juilliard, I believe, hated them, and their score was low from her, and they didn't win the whole thing, which of course Kay Cannon then turned into vomiting, which, it's a comedy movie, so you gotta amp it up a little bit. But it was through that I think Elizabeth Banks, found her, maybe word of mouth or whatever, called and said, like, hey, you want to come on board and work on this project?
Cool.
Yeah.
So how was that?
Working on Pitch Perfect?
Pitch Perfect.
Crazy, and initially it was insane.
Yeah.
And it was a little aggravating too, because, okay, so my dream was, first movie, red carpet, I'm going to have the Bard and Bellas, and they're going to be up there singing their little butts off, doing all this live a cappella. All the members of the Bard and Bellas can sing, but they didn't have a cappella experience. Right. So we had one, Kelly Jekyll, we pulled over from 2 seasons of the Sing-Off. She was our ringer. In fact, they all, like, Brittany Snow calls her the professional in rehearsal. So, like, Deke, can the professional sing my part for me one more time to make sure I have it right? But the fact of the matter is that first month of acapella boot camp, I lost a lot of sleep because I was just like the Sing-Off. This is our one chance with television. Pitch Perfect was, this is our one chance in the movies. It's got to be great. And we would do these show and tells every Friday afternoon. And the Troublemakers, who were comprised of 2 stars on Broadway, 2 young stars on Broadway singing leads, and then a bunch of guys, many of whom were drawn from local collegiate a cappella groups. Right. They actually could really sing, and they were really good on the Friday afternoons. And the Bard and Bellas were not as good. Right. And I don't know if you've seen the movie, but the Bellas need to win the movie. Right. So there was some pressure coming down on my shoulders, and Ed Boyer, who was my partner, we worked very closely together in the movie. It was like, Deke, the Bellas need to win this. Are you aware of that? So more lost sleep. And then the finale arrangement. I like to joke that it was like a mad scientist situation, because I'd go in and bring the latest edit of it, and Jason Moore, the director, was like, more. We need more. Key changes here, and I need more layers mashed up. Okay, and I bring it back and add more. And I come back, more! So I ran back, and finally the last version I brought to him, and he was like, yeah, it's a little too much.
It's too much.
So, and then that's what made it into the movie. So, yeah. Nice. But in the end, of course, movie magic and everything, and the Bellas stepped up at the last minute, and they were all like, all the artistry that they have, all that great emotion they put into the music, and all the pieces fit together, and it worked out. But it was a rough first month.
I bet, yeah.
I mean, quite the experience, I imagine.
Yeah, but here's the thing. You need to know, Gold Circle, like, only had 1 hit movie up to that point, My Big Fat Greek Wedding, and like 70 movies that were tiny and went direct to DVD, or Blood Creek and stuff. Like, go on there, IMDb. You're like, oh, so I was like, well, we're going to be one of those. Right. Because when I first negotiated my contract, I asked about the soundtrack, and they said, well, we're not planning on making a soundtrack.
Interesting.
And I said, what do you mean? They said, well, this isn't a big enough movie for that. Like, that's how small this movie initially was in scope and in perspective and in budget. So the fact that the movie comes out in 2012, in October it opens and people like it, and word of mouth starts to spread, and then it goes out on DVD before Christmas, and then it blows up. And then we had the biggest soundtrack of 2013. Right. Think about, when does that happen in movie history, that your soundtrack is big the year after? And it was one of the few platinum albums that year, and it was the best-selling soundtrack over Les Mis, and all these great Rock of Ages, all these big budget music movies came out, and so it was a little engine that could, and no one more than me was surprised. I mean, overjoyed, but it was like, everyone, what's happening right now?
I'm a big Kay Cannon fan. She's one of my favorite writers.
She's amazing.
She's amazing. She's great. Been a fan of her since 30 Rock and everything. And it's fun. She did an interview with Seth Meyers where she was like, and all of a sudden I was at Walmart and I went to the rack to look at the Pitch Perfect rack, and there were no movies there. And I was like, oh my gosh, I guess we sold all of them. And she's like, that's when I realized this was not a small little indie. Like, this was a blockbuster.
It was a monster. Yeah. And then you think about all the people sharing, and the fact that it was so big in the college world, and all those people illegally download. They didn't buy those. You know what I mean? So it was even bigger than you would have initially expected. And everybody at the helm of that movie, especially Elizabeth Banks and her husband Max, like, they are fantastic. They're smart and they're caring and they want it to be true to the real a cappella. And yet at the same time, I told Liz on the first day, pull no punches. Like, this needs to be a funny movie.
Right.
Make fun of us. Like, we're dorks. Like,
oh, yeah.
So, and that's the beautiful combination between... But at the same time, if people are not out of their chairs cheering for the bells at the end of the movie, it doesn't work.
Right.
So we need each other, and there's a great balance there.
Yeah.
I was totally cheering for it. And when I watched that movie in theaters, because, I also did the Glee after show here, so I was, like, really in tune with the music and whatnot. So when I watched it, I was literally walking out of the theater, like, buying the soundtrack on my... Like, I bought the whole soundtrack before I even walked to my car. It was that good.
Yeah, and the second soundtrack debuted at #1 on the Billboard charts.
Yeah,
not the Billboard soundtrack, the Billboard, which is nuts.
Yeah.
Again, like, wow, yeah.
Cool.
And you had some challenges, and I imagine the first and the second one, because of the song rights and whatnot. Did that change, like, storytelling?
Well, what happens is we sit down very early on with an early version of the script, and we, like, where are the music moments, what are the right kinds of songs, and we just talk about it. Like, for the first movie, it's like, okay, you got these girls, they're stuck in the late 80s, early 90s, they're going to do a 3-song ICCA set. The middle tune would be, I'm like, so it'd be a ballad. What's like an overwarmed, like, cheesy heart ballad that like they'd be just gushing on stage and they'd think it's really emotional, but people in the audience would be like rolling their eyes. And I was remembering back to my days, and I was like, the New Hampshire Notables sang Eternal Flame, and it was just that moment.
Yeah.
And they were like, perfect, home run. So I got to draw on my own history.
That's fun.
Everybody's pitching different song ideas in there, and that's what made it so great, was that it's really a round table. There's so much creativity coming from many different angles.
Cool. Amazing.
We loved Pitch Perfect 1 and 2 because the day Pitch Slapped aired, we marathoned both of them.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
To get in
double
the
feature.
acapella
To get in the
zone.
mood, yeah.
That's great too, because the soundtracks really do preserve a great acapella sound. Because I wondered how that was going to be handled. So that was cool that the movies sound like acapella CDs, which is great.
Yeah, but sound like real, natural live performances. And for that, the biggest shout out has to go to Ed Boyer.
Yeah.
He is the man who, more than anyone else, has crafted the sound of modern acapella. He was the guy who recorded the Dalton Warblers on Glee.
Right.
He's the guy who mixes all the pentatonic stuff. And he really understands that perfect balance between something that's going to be catchy and work within the sonic spectrum of what people are hearing on current radio, and at the same time, the honesty and the natural sound of voices. So nothing is like super tuned, nothing is like super over the top in your face. Like, there's a heart, there's an honesty.
So I've got a question. How do you feel about Code Red, the album, as a bub yourself?
I produced that album.
Right, I love it. Yeah.
Okay, so
that album,
at that point,
that changed acapella.
it was intending to. So, and the order of the album made a big difference too. By putting Mr. Roboto first, which is a very heavily tuned, mechanized track with all kinds of sound effects.
Yeah.
Although that whole Domo Arigato, that was actually 100% vocal. People are like, you use robots on it. Like, no, it's just a guy who sounds like a robot. You find those in college. But the idea was basically at that point to say anything goes.
Yeah.
Guys, stop trying to follow on one single path. Let's go in every direction as fast and as hard as you can, and let's explore what the human voice can do.
Cool.
Let's imitate instruments. Let's imitate modern production. Let's try new things. And that's really what's happening on the album. But people really got caught up on that first track and said, like, it's too tuned. It's like, it brought out a lot of philosophical discussions as to what collegiate acapella could be, which is what we wanted in a way.
I love the album. I was just wondering, like, knowing acapella sound now, then how you feel about it retrospectively and...
Proud.
Yeah.
Proud.
Oh, it's a great album.
To stick a flag in another planet and basically say, like, okay, here's this. Because then what happens is people see that, they replicate it, and then they move on from there.
Yeah.
And there's only so much. Just like think about the early days of using reverb in recordings, or the early days of electric guitar, the early days of stereo recordings or quadraphonic. People got too caught up in the technology and they played with it. Like, you hear some of those Beatles recordings in the original mix where, like, everything's on, half the instruments are on this side, half the... It sounds really clumsy now, but you have to go through that process to then get to the point where you understand how it all works in stereo space. So acapella had those growing pains, and now people are doing whatever they want. And interestingly, the most successful groups, you're out there with Pentatonics and Home Free and Straight No Chaser, they all have very natural sound to their recording. People ultimately want to hear what your voices sound like, which is what happened back in the late 80s, early 90s when Boyz II Men and Bobby McFerrin and Huey Lewis and the News and the Nylons and everybody were having their radio hits. Again, ultimately, acapella is at its core human.
Cool. I love it.
Right, that's amazing.
Yeah.
With all the vocal groups that are out there that do a cappella, what's a group or a couple of groups that you listen to all the time that like you can't get enough of?
I hate acapella. I don't understand. You know, I intentionally listen broadly to everything, and I want to hear like, wow, there's this new great acapella group in Brazil, or ooh, the latest thing from vocal sampling in Cuba. I've loved those guys for 20 years. What's going on there? Or ooh, this is a group in Croatia, and they're mixing in the local clap-up tradition, et cetera, et cetera. So I'm a wide net guy when it comes to acapella. I really do love it all. And it's like there's this giant smorgasbord of flavors and colors and sounds out there. And I like experiencing the vast majority of it. But I don't find myself listening repeatedly to like, oh, this is my album this month.
Okay.
Because I get too caught up in it. So like when I'm cooking, I'll put on some jazz or some bossa nova, some classical music or whatever, because then it needs to take me to a different place.
Yeah.
And out of that part of my brain.
Cool.
Or else I'll burn my food. I'm like, whoa, should he really? The third's too loud in that chord. The eggs are, why'd I do that?
Ruined it.
Is that in tune?
Yeah.
Yeah. You've arranged like thousands of songs. Is there a particular song nowadays with all the new music that's coming that you haven't arranged yet that you really want to?
Not really,
No?
but that's because, and I'm going to sound strange saying this with arranging being a big part of what I do, I don't view arrangements as their own creation. An arrangement is merely a roadmap to help the performer connect with the audience.
Cool.
And so for me, the best arrangements that I've done are the ones where I've really been able to custom tailor it so that there's really that moment, that push, that expression, that connection. Back when I was in the Bubs, or when I've produced different groups' albums like Straight No Chaser, or even with Stay Tuned, where like, okay, like what do I want to do? Here are these singers, here's this song, here's this thing that I want to teach. Let's get that connection happening. And I do have a bunch of published music where I'm trying to create some clothes that'll fit people really well off the rack, which is a different skill set, as it were. But ultimately, my real joy is in watching the final product. And something that I need to say to people all the time, and they don't get it, change my arrangements. Please, change notes. That's what I would do if I were there. The notes themselves, they're just black and white dots on a page. They don't matter. What matters are your singers and the audience and that connection. So please, change the notes.
Cool. Awesome.
That's excellent. And it's like, I love your teaching method. And because I've watched a lot of your...
Too many notes?
Too many notes,
Oh,
yeah.
okay, thank you.
On YouTube. But like, I love how you approach each subject in a way that everyone can understand it. And I think you have like such a great teaching ability that people can, just click and be like, yes, I get it.
Thank you.
I love how you bring that to Pitch Slapped and just your career in general.
Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah, I think it's great.
Yeah.
You have a couple vocal groups that you're a part of right now, and like you help produce and direct.
That I'm working on and all stuff.
with,
Yeah. Well, I'd say my latest big production right now is a group called Vocalocity, and they are out on the road. They're touring the eastern half of the U.S. Started in Florida. They're up Wisconsin and Iowa right now. They're going to be cutting through Minneapolis all the way over to Boston. They're going down to Texas. Wow. Go to vocalocityontour.com to check that out.
How do you spell that? Just because I know it.
VOCALO SITY.
Great.
On tour. And they are the ultimate all-star a cappella group. It's 12 singers, some from Broadway, some from The Voice, from the Sing-Off, from the beatbox world, and they are an unbelievable group of 12 singers.
Are they coming to Cali?
Hopefully we're booking that right now for the fall.
Okay, great.
Yes.
So they'll be out here.
We'll be there.
We'll buy tickets.
It's super fun. So they are a big thing that's on the road for a while now, and their album just released on iTunes and Amazon's. We've got a record deal for this new thing. It's really great.
That's amazing.
Yeah, on Universal Classic, so that's really great. And but you can find it online. You can listen to some of the tracks on YouTube and Spotify and iTunes and all that kind of stuff. So that's Vocalocity. And then I have an annual concert at Carnegie Hall, which is coming up on March 20th, which is really fun. I have singers fly in from all around the world, and then we're going to have some special guests from a couple of the Pitch Perfect actresses. Esther Dean's going to be there, and Chrissy Fit, and Fitz 80 is going to be there, who was the beatboxer in Das Sound Machine.
Oh, nice.
Yeah. And then the Philharmonic are going to come and perform as well from the Sing-Off, and some other special guests and things like that.
Amazing.
So that's going to be super great. And so I'm finishing my third book right now called The Heart of Vocal Harmony, which is all about the process of teaching groups to get together and perform with genuine unified emotion.
I mean, I love that because
awesome.
not enough, so many technical musicians don't push emotion. Then it's like, what are you doing? You know what I mean?
Well, and it's especially challenging within vocal harmony groups. Okay, so let's say you've got a rock band. You really only need your lead singer to deliver the lyric,
Right.
and the rest of the guys, the drummer can be there doing his thing, and everybody's focused on that lead singer. Or in a symphony, you've got a conductor, and everybody's looking at their music and looking down. Their countenance doesn't matter as much to the music.
Right.
But when you've got a bunch of people up on stage, be it 5 singers or 50, their faces are connecting with the audience.
Right.
And if there's no one home, or if you have different emotions firing from different people, you can have a real misdirect. And I don't know that there's anything in the literature that actually fully addresses this. In fact, people who go to school to learn how to teach choirs, or people who study vocal music and vocal harmony, they focus on the rhythm, they focus on the notes, they focus on the pitches and the performance and maybe even the movement, but not necessarily that emotional connection.
Cool.
So getting everybody, and here's another thing, in the acting world, everybody has their own character, they have their own personality, and so everybody's approaching the scene differently. There's no genre, there's no artistic form in which everybody has to be expressing the same emotion at the same time in the same way. So that's the challenge here, and so that's what this book addresses.
Amazing.
That's been, and you've worked with so many people. Are there any other musicians that you wish to work for or work with in the future?
Well,
like you would love absolutely.
Ray Charles and James Brown were 2 huge moments in my life.
Yeah.
Who else out there? So many great people. I've never worked with Stevie Wonder. That would be a true
Stevie
honor.
would be
And I know he
amazing.
loves acapella, and he's working with Take 6 all the time. Whatever. Hopefully one day I'll get an opportunity.
I bet it'll happen. We'll see.
We'll
I just have a
see.
feeling.
Who
yeah.
knows?
All
But
right.
but there's just so many great musicians out
yeah.
there, and yeah.
Cool.
That's amazing. Well, thank you so much for.
Thank
It's my pleasure.
It's so great.
The time flew by.
I know.
It's unbelievable.
Pick
yeah.
your brain all day. This is amazing. This
So
was
much
really
fun.
fun. We really
Thank
do
you.
love Pitch Slap. Anything where anyone can follow you?
Oh yeah,
Let
well
us know.
I'm easy to find online. My website's DekeSharon.com, and on Twitter I'm Deke Sharon, and on Instagram I'm Deke Sharon, and I think it's on Tumblr I'm like Deke_Sharon or
Nice.
something.
That's
Okay.
the one.
But yeah, totally. Facebook, Deke Sharon, like it's all like
Unified.
who would have a crazy name like mine, whatever.
That's a cool name.
Oh, thank you. But basically, yeah, it's easy to find me online. And the number one thing I want to leave people with, which camera's on? I'll go with that one.
yeah.
Here's the deal, people. I want to help you sing. My life's work is to spread harmony through harmony, and I'm not joking in any way. When you're watching this, if you want to find a group in your area, contact me. I will help you find a group. If you want to start a group, I will help you start a group. You go to www.acapella.how, H-O-W, and there's all this free material there, and you can read that and then contact me, and I will help you start a group. And if you need arrangements, if you're stuck, you don't know what to do, your group's going through this crisis, you need to find a new bass, whatever it is, I'm there to help you. I'm not expecting any money for this. I'm just trying to get more people singing and make the world a more harmonious place. I'm not joking. Some people are watching this and they're thinking like, oh, well, he's just saying that. Because he's like, no, seriously, contact me. I will get right back to you and I will help you in every way I can.
Amazing.
Harmony for harmony.
Harmony through harmony.
Love
Harmony
it.
through harmony.
That's my life's work.
Alrighty.
Excellent. Jeff, where can everyone follow you?
Guys, thanks so much for tuning in. You can find me on Twitter at Jeffrey C. Graham and on Instagram at Jeffrey Crane Graham.
And thanks everyone for listening. You can follow me on Twitter at Serafini TV. You can follow all of us here on Twitter AFTERBUZZ at AFTERBUZZ TV, Facebook, Instagram, all those fun social media platforms. Check out Pitch Perfect After Show because we also cover that. Thank you so much again, Deke.
my pleasure.
Aka God in the studios right
Yes.
now.
Nice to say
Aka
that.
God.
Thanks, guys.
Thanks everyone. We'll see you next time.
See ya.
From executive producers Maria Menounos, Kevin Undergaro, Phil Svitek, and the entire AfterBuzz TV staff, we would like to thank you for listening to the AfterBuzz TV network. To watch or listen to other after shows and post comments or questions, be sure to visit AfterBuzzTV.com. I'm Sir Richard Wentworth, and this has been a presentation of AfterBuzz TV.
Buzz you later.
The views expressed herein are those of the hosts only and do not necessarily reflect the views of AfterBuzz TV or its owners or principals.